Guys, finally made it to another secret stream. I apologize that it's been a few weeks, but we have this problem with our laptop that it just keeps rejecting newly installed keyboards. And so anyways, I'm back, and as usual, I appreciate your support. And I posted that there would be a special message, and there is, but it's not something that is like secret for the patrons. This is something that I'm really going to be pushing as much as humanly possible. It's the sort of antidote to the climate that we find ourselves in, the social climate. And you guys are a little bit different than the public, because I know that you're really listening. Sometimes I'm a bit baffled by, the last stream I did got more views than usual, higher percentage of likes, but the subscribers was -2. So it's hard for me to understand what to make of that sort of thing. But I know you guys are listening. And so, the most important thing that we can do right now is to remember that the expansion of consciousness, the evolution of the individual consciousness and the collective consciousness is entirely about freedom of expression for the individual, the sovereignty of the individual will, and the freedom of expression of the individual. And this is something that I feel like has gotten largely lost and obscured since 2020, maybe earlier. It started to kind of slip under the wheels of the bus and get run over and mutilated. But this is something that I feel like, the left and the counterculture back in the day understood very clearly and concisely. And it's very easy with the complexity of human values and human society and culture. Those dogs will shut up. That it's very easy to get lost. It's very easy to get lost in idealism. Aldous Huxley called it the labyrinthine flux, and he was really referencing the universe at large. But because of the fact of the microcosm, macrocosm, the universe at large is it's a map, and vice versa, of the smaller systems within the greater system, right? So what he was saying is that it's like a maze that's ever changing. And it's just a sort of unfortunate consequence of the reflective structure of the universe that's going to be the case with culture and society, just as it is with the grander universe, particularly in the arenas of metaphysics and spirituality. But so what we have here is a failure to communicate. It's like in the quest for the liberation of the individual, because you guys are aware, back in the 1950s, the early 1960s, there was tremendous pressure to conform. Deviations from conformity were met with violence oftentimes, and it was a much more extreme situation than we have even today. And complete and total acceptance of authority was also expected of everyone. And so the war protesters and the people that were starting to get high and all of that stuff, they were well on the right track. But somehow over the last, however many years, 10 years, let's say, the mission to unify, to bring people to a place of rational thought, of a balance between atheism and woo-based spirituality, to find a place of serenity and clarity, and the realization that this sort of gnosis that brought about the changes in humanity that allowed us to live with tolerance of each other, we're not that far away from the everyday consciousness of the average person. All of that stuff was realized and then at least partially lost. And so what we have to do now in order to reclaim the territory that we have already conquered, that we already claimed, we must remember that the fundamental primary objective of this entire movement and of the evolution of humanity is to allow for the totally free expression of the individual. That's it, really. Up to the extent that it is problematic for other wills, right? Every man and woman is a star with a course that is both proper and necessary for that individual, just as stars do not collide. If we find our purpose and align with it, then we don't have to worry about these conflicts. And so, you know, we just have to watch out for getting sucked into narratives. That's the main bullet point of the special message for the patrons right now, is that, you know, we have to be extra vigilant when it comes to evaluating information that we accept. We have to be as objective as humanly possible in regards to our own proclivities and inclinations. We have to constantly be mindful and evaluating them, because we are at the forefront of a movement. And it may feel like we're outnumbered. It may feel like the opposition is too great, but it's always looked like that, and we've always progressed anyways. So, you know, keep the faith, and, you know, just, we all really have to double down on our efforts to become the best versions of ourselves that we possibly can, and to absolutely defy any tendency, inclination to adopt any of these narratives wholesale, because every single one of them is 50-50 lies and truth, and they're all generated by the propaganda machine. So, you know, we really have to train our minds to use logic, to ascertain key bono. Whenever you run across a piece of information, you have to ask yourself, who benefits? Could this be propaganda? You know, when we're talking about green energy stuff, it's really easy to see, like, well, big energy is, you know, the people that would generate the propaganda and have the power to, and, you know what I mean? Like, there's, so there's reason to be suspicious of those type of narratives. But yeah, we must free our minds, and that does not mean extricating ourselves from one bullshit trap propaganda narrative into another. And I see a lot of that happening. And it's both discouraging and confusing for me, because I feel like it's so easy to spot the propaganda and to evade being entrapped by it. So I just want to encourage all of you to double down, triple down, quadruple down on your efforts at conscious evolution, and, you know, having courage and fearlessness and determination and resolution, and, you know, also the commitment to encourage others to follow suit. So we had been working our way through degree 28 of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and honestly, I'm a little bit sad when I see how many people actually watch these secret streams. Sometimes there's only 3 or 4. This really is the depths of wisdom. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any deeper. It doesn't get any more profound. This is it. This is it. And it's unfortunate that not all of my patrons are availing themselves of this content, because you know, I was just perusing a little bit and looking at individual lines, and it really hit me that, you know, there's also some interesting assertions that are not in sync or congruent with the official narrative on human history. He mentions that before the human race marched down before the human race marched down from the slopes of the Himalayas to take possession of Asia, the human race came from the Himalayas. What? You know, that sort of thing. There's a lot of that, and you have to really kind of be paying attention. But the claim is being made by the Freemasons and other mystery schools that there is a direct lineage back to the most early sources, and that this line of communication is unbroken. And I think when you look at the level of the wisdom, the quality of the wisdom, the depth and breadth of the knowledge that is held within the libraries of, you know, the halls of a Minty or the mystery schools, it kind of affirms that this is true, that this is a legitimate claim. And so when there are things that are just kind of casually thrown out like that, I kind of take notice. And nature is full of religious lessons to a thoughtful man. He dissolves the matter of the universe, leaving only its forces. He dissolves away the phenomena of human history, leaving only a mortal spirit. He studies the law, the mode of action of these forces, and the spirit, which make up the material in the human world, and cannot fail to be filled with reverence, with trust, with boundless love, and thereby bears up this marvelous universe of things and men. And there's a lot of stuff like that. The eternal flowers of heaven seem to shed sweet influence on the perishable blossoms of the earth. The great sermon of Jesus was preached on a mountain, which preached to him as he did to the people, and his figures of speech were first natural figures of fact. So lots of just amazing lines. But that was a little bit before we actually finished up about here. So knowing that we shall live forever, that the infinite God loves all of us, we can look on all the evils of the world and see that it is only the hour before sunrise, and that the light is coming. And so we also, even we, may light a little taper to illuminate the darkness while it lasts, and help until the day spring come. That shit's gangster. I mean, that's really the motivation, the intuition that has driven me for ever since childhood. And it was a marvelous and such improbable discovery when I was a young child, and I just had this belief or this inclination or suspicion that I had been born just in time to witness this transformation of mankind, and this sort of knowledge that I held was central to it. When I started to realize that I was not alone in that. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, for example, when you become a new initiate, they say to you, "Inheritor of a dying world, quit the night and seek the day." And that's not so impressive if it's coming from 2020, but it was you know, originally spoken to the new initiates in 1888. Inheritor of a dying world, quit the night and seek the day. And you know, earlier in this book he says, once we have crushed religion, government, superstition, racism, all of these, you know, schism kind of games, the great revolution that has been prepared by the ages will begin to march, that has for its aim the amelioration of mankind from suffering, from thraldom, from servitude, etc., etc. So you know, this idea that with this knowledge of process, right? This is not about faith. This is about knowledge of process, about the fundamental underlying mechanisms of the universe and how they work together to produce certain predictable results based on patterns. It is not from faith in some book or some guru speaking that we come to this confidence of this certain outcome. It is based entirely on observation of nature. When he was talking earlier about how did he say it? When you dissolve the matter of the universe and look at the underlying modalities and constructs and the guiding principles, this is where this knowledge comes from. This is where this faith and understanding comes from. It's not faith in a God that you read about in a book. It is direct observation and experience that results in knowledge that extends beyond learning and experience. And so to illuminate this darkness, so when we look upon all the evils of the world, we know that it is only the hour before sunrise, and I'm saying that all the time, that this period of chaos and destruction and confusion and darkness is just a necessary part of the process. And they, that old cliche, it is always darkest before the dawn, is upheld here. Eternal morning follows the night. A rainbow scarfs the shoulders of every cloud that weeps its wane A rainbow scarfs the shoulders of every cloud that weeps its rain away to be flowers on land and pearls at sea. Life rises out of the grave. The soul cannot be held by fettering flesh. No dawn is hopeless, and disaster is only the threshold of delight. Beautifully, above the great wide chaos of human errors, shines the calm, clear light of natural human religion, revealing to us God as the infinite parent of all, perfectly powerful, wise, just, and perfectly holy. Beautiful around stretches of every way the universe, the great Bible of God, the true scripture that is writ large upon the land, observable to those who have eyes to see. Material nature is the Old Testament, millions of years old, thick with eternal truths under our feet, glittering with everlasting glories over our heads. And human nature is the New Testament from the infinite God, every day revealing a new page as time turns over the leaves. Immortality stands waiting to give a recompense for every virtue not rewarded, for every tear not wiped away, for every sorrow undeserved, for every prayer, for every pure intention and emotion of the heart. And over the whole, over nature, material and human, over this mortal life, and over the eternal past and future, the infinite loving kindness of God the Father comes enfolding all and blessing everything that ever was, that is, that ever shall be. Everything is a thought of the infinite God. Nature is his prose and man his poetry. There is no chance, no fate. You like that one? There is no chance, there is no fate. It is both true and false. All of these things are both true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. This is something that I think is very difficult for people to really wrap their heads around, because we are sort of programmed to think in terms of black and white absolutes, yes or no, right or wrong, and nothing is really that simple. Everything is much more gray than black and white. But I also love how those things are just kind of like sporadically, sprinkled in there. And, they're not, he doesn't really hang on it. There's no chance, no fate, but providence enfolding the whole universe in its bosom and feeding it with everlasting life. In times past, there has been evil which we cannot understand. Now there are evils which we cannot solve, nor make square with God's perfect goodness by any theory our feeble intellect enables us to frame. There are sufferings, follies, and sins for all mankind, for every nation, for every man and every woman. They were all foreseen by the infinite wisdom, all provided for by his infinite power and justice, and all are all consistent with his infinite love. To believe otherwise would be to believe that he made the world to amuse his idle hours with the follies and agonies of mankind, as Domitian was wont to do with the wrigglings and contortions of insect agonies. Then, indeed, we might despairingly unite in that horrible utterance of Heine, Alas, God's satire weighs heavily on me. The great author of the universe, the Aristophanes of heaven, is bent on demonstrating with crushing force to me, the little earthly German Aristophanes, how my wittiest sarcasms are only pitiful attempts at jesting in comparison with his, and how miserable I am beneath him in humor and colossal mockery. No, no, God is not amused with and prodigal of human suffering. The world is neither a here without a hereafter, a body without a soul, a chaos with no God, nor a body blasted by a soul. A here with a worse hereafter, a world with a God that hates more than half the creatures he has made. There is no savage, revengeful, and evil God, but there is an infinite mind, seen everywhere as perfect cause, everywhere as perfect providence, transcending all, yet indwelling everywhere in everything with perfect power, wisdom, justice, holiness, and love, providing for the future welfare of each and all, foreseeing and for caring for every bubble that breaks on the great stream of human life and human history. The end of man and the object of existence in this world being not only happiness, but happiness and virtue, and through virtue. Virtue in this world is the condition of happiness in another life, and the condition of virtue in this world is suffering, more or less frequent, briefer or longer continued, more or less intense. Take away suffering, and there is no longer any resignation or humanity, no more self-sacrifice, no more devotedness, no more heroic virtues, no more sublime morality. We are subjected to suffering because we are sensible, and because we ought to be virtuous. If there were no physical evil, there would be no possible virtue, and the world would be badly adapted to the destiny of man. The apparent disorders of the physical world and the evils that result from them are not disorders and evils that occur despite the power and goodness of God. God not only allows, but wills them. It is his will that there shall be in the physical world causes enough of pain for man to afford him occasions for resignation and courage. Whatever is favorable to virtue, whatever gives moral liberty more energy, whatever can serve the greater moral development of the human race is good. Suffering is not the worst condition of man on earth. The worst condition is the moral brutalization which the absence of physical evil would engender. The worst condition is the moral brutalization which the absence of physical evil would engender. External or internal physical evil connects itself with the object of existence, which is to accomplish the moral laws here below, whatever the consequences, with the firm hope that virtue, unfortunate, will not fail to be rewarded in another life. The moral law has its sanction and its reason in itself. It owes nothing to that law of merit and demerit that accompanies it, but is not its basis. But through the principle of merit and demerit ought not to be the determining principle of virtuous action. It powerfully concurs with the moral law because it offers virtue a legitimate ground of consolation and hope. Morality is the recognition of duty, as duty and its accomplishment, whatever the consequences. Religion is the recognition of duty in its necessary harmony with goodness, a harmony that must have its realization in another life through the justice and omnipotence of the universal mind. Religion is as true as morality, for once morality is admitted, its consequences must be admitted. The whole moral existence is included in these two words, harmonious with each other, duty and hope. Masonry teaches that God is infinitely good. What motive, what reason, and morally speaking, what possibility can there be to an infinite power and infinite wisdom to be anything but good? Our very sorrows, proclaiming the loss of objects inexpressibly dear to us, demonstrates his goodness. The being that made us intelligent cannot himself be without intelligence, and he who has made us so to love and to sorrow for what we love must number love for the creatures he has made among his infinite attributes. Amid all our sorrows, we take refuge in the assurance that he loves us, and that he does not capriciously, or through indifference and still less in mere anger, grieve and afflict us, that he chastens us in order that by his chastisements, which are by his universal law only the consequences of our own actions, we may be profited and that he could not show us much love for his creatures by leaving them unchastened, untried, and undisciplined. We have faith in the infinite, and it is that faith that must save us. No suffering or bereavement is a messenger of wrath. None of its circumstances are indications of anger. Bad men do not die because God hates them. They die because it is best for them that they should do so. And bad as they are, it is better for them to be in the hands of the infinitely good God than anywhere else. Darkness and gloom lie upon the paths of men. They stumble at difficulties, are ensnared by temptations, and perplexed by trouble. They are anxious and troubled and fearful. Pain and affliction and sorrow often gather around the steps of their earthly pilgrimage. All this is written indelibly upon the tablets of the human heart. It is not to be erased, but Masonry sees and reads it in a new light. It does not expect these ills and trials, sufferings to be removed from life, but that the great truth will at some time be understood by all men, and that they are the means selected by infinite wisdom to purify the heart and to invigorate the soul whose inheritance is immortality and the world its school. Masonry propagates no creed except its own most simple and sublime one, the universal religion taught by nature and by reason. Its lodges are neither Jewish, Muslim, nor Christian. It reiterates the precept of morality. It venerates the character and commends the teachings of the great and good of all ages and of all countries. It extracts the good and not the evil, the truth and not the error from all creeds, and acknowledges that there is much good and true in all. Above all the other great teachers of morality and virtue, it reveres the character of the great master who, submissive to the will of his and our Father, died upon the cross. All must admit that if the world were filled with beings like him, the great ills of society would be at once relieved. For all coercion, injury, selfishness, and revenge, and all the wrongs and greatest sufferings of life would disappear at once. These human years would be happy, and the eternal ages would roll on in brightness and beauty, and the still sad music of humanity that sounds through the world, now in accents of grief, and now in pensive melancholy, would change to anthems, sounding to the march of time and bursting out from the heart of the world. If every man were a perfect imitator of the great, wise, and good, clothed with all his faith and virtues, how the circle of life's ills and trials would be narrowed. The sensual passions would assail the heart in vain. Want would no longer successfully tempt men to act wrongly, nor curiosity to do rashly. Ambition, spreading before men its kingdoms and its thrones, and offices and honors, would cause none to swerve from their great allegiance. Injury and insult would be shamed by forgiveness. Father, men would say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. None would seek to be enriched at another's loss or expense. Every man would feel that the whole human race were his brothers. All sorrow and pain and anguish would be soothed by a perfect faith and an entire trust in the infinite goodness of creation. The world around us would be new, and the heavens above us. For here and there and everywhere, through all the ample glories and splendors of the universe, all men would recognize and feel the presence and the beneficent care of the universal mind. So I will leave you with that thought, and I do believe, although I'm not much of a fan of Christianity as it was, or as it has been, I almost want to say committed. It is true that if everyone followed the one line of Jesus, to love your neighbor as you love yourself, which should not really be that difficult to do, all of the evils of the world would vanish instantly. Nearly all of them. Because there's always going to be chaos and the potential for, a tree to fall on a young child or whatever. So, but at least the evils that men do to each other and the perversions and distortions that are possible through the propaganda machine, all of that would be instantly relieved from our list of burdens. So thank you guys again so much for your support, and I will be back.